Welcome to the Historical Romance Sampler Podcast, the place for you to find new historical romance books and authors to fan over. I'm award-winning historical romance author Katherine Grant, and each week I'm inviting fellow authors to come on and share a little bit of their work and themselves. They'll read a sample of one of their books, and then I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions. By the end of the episode, you'll have a sense of what they write and who they are. Hopefully, you and I both will have something new to read. So what are we waiting for? Let's get into this week's episode. I am super excited to be joined today by Steffy Smith, all the way from Australia. Inspired by her dreams, Steffy writes stories from across the eras, combining her love of history and happily ever afters. Her writing is fueled by Earl Grey, sporadic bouts of manic energy, and keeping herself accountable with deadlines. From Regency ballrooms to Scottish Highlands, from Viking longboats to Western saloons, Steffy has a story for you. Steffy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to talk to you and hear one of your stories. So what era are you giving us today?
So it will be the Regency era in obviously England, and it's a story that's part of a 12 author series collaboration. So yeah, it was really exciting to be part of that and to share some of that story today.
I love that. So what is the name of the book?
So it's His Regency Goddess, and it's part of the Curves and Cravats collaboration.
Fantastic. We had Felicity Niven on earlier reading hers, so we're getting a little bit of the
Awesome.
curves and cravats here.
Yeah.
All right, well, whenever you're ready, tell us
Okay.
about the scene and take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to start midway through chapter 4 and then lead into the next chapter. So my characters are Sin and Sophie. We're going to start with some point of view from Sin first. So he's getting ready to go to a social event where he's going to see Sophie and meet her for the first time.
Nice.
So we'll have a bit of his vanity to start off with. All right, here I go. So he was nearly dressed and moved to the mirror to don his cravat. Sin crossed the ends of the stiff white cloth around his neck before reaching for a silver and jade pin from his travels to hold the ends in place. Stepping back, he eyed his full length before pulling on his black waistcoat, black and white with a little pop of colour. His light brown hair and dark eyes contrasted well with the black and white, and his bright grin flashed as he took himself in. He believed that men who wore colourful clothes were fops. He picked up his gold pocket watch and checked the time before placing it in his trouser pockets. It was 9:30, perfect time, not too early, not too late, and he could wait no longer. Look at you swell devil, James Greybridge, the host of the evening, welcomed him with a warm embrace. It is good to see you, James, Sim replied as he returned the embrace. James was another close friend, but one he had not kept in contact with as he had Daniel. James introduced him to his wife Cecily, a petite brunette who was all smiles and giggles. He looked back to James, who winked at him over the top of her head. James' ideal woman had always been a giddy Deb, and it seemed his old friend had landed himself the perfect match. Come, Sin, let us go and reacquaint ourselves over a drink before you get rushed by all the other guests. Good idea. Has Daniel arrived yet? He hoped his tone was casual and did not betray his eagerness at seeing Sophie. He has, with his wife and her friend. Let me grab him as well. We three can share a drink, just like old times. James asked Cecily to bring Daniel over, and in moments Daniel, his wife, and that delectable goddess Sophie were walking towards him. Sophie was wearing a green dress, the colour setting off her ginger hair and accentuating those pale green doe eyes. She seemed nervous, with a wide-eyed innocent look. He watched the tip of her tongue escape and lick her plump pink lips. His eyes narrowed as he noticed he was not the only one admiring Sophie. His body tensed as jealousy surged through him. Get it together, Sin, he scolded himself. He sensed a hostile stare and shifted his gaze to find the narrowed eyes of Daniel's wife. Sin, is this an improved you arriving at a party so early? Daniel ripped. Allow me the pleasure of introducing my wife, my Viscountess Margot, and her dear friend, Dowager Duchess of Whitmore, Sophia Westcott. This is my old friend, Lord Sinclair Montgomery. Daniel and James appeared to be a few drinks in and oblivious to the tension. Margot was unimpressed, Sophie was nervous, and he was confused, aroused, and surprised all at the same time. Cecily was smiling prettily at no one as she hung onto her husband. Sin grabbed Margot's hand first and bent over to kiss her gloved hand. It's such a pleasure to meet the woman who has made my friend so happy, he murmured politely. She replied coolly, How kind, I've heard so much about you. He ignored her emphasis and turned his attentions to Sophie. Everything and everyone else faded away as he grabbed her hand. The white satin glove provided little barrier to the heat that erupted at this contact. He brought her hand up to his lips, but flipped it and placed a hot kiss to her pulse before he lifted his gaze to her jade eyes. It is a pleasure to meet you, Your Grace. I am Sinclair Montgomery. Sin indeed, Sophie gasped inwardly as she tried to refrain from fanning herself. The clear head dropped off as soon as she met his gaze. This man could easily personify one of the seven deadly sins as lust erupted in her body. She had told the universe she wanted passion, and now Providence was tempting her with a simple kiss on the hand. Margot's derisive snort brought her out of her cascading thoughts, and she quickly let go of Sin's hand. The twinkle of mirth in his dark eyes and his lazy smile told her he had not missed a second of her reaction. Ah, ladylike as always, dear wife, Daniel told Margot jovially, with a kiss to her forehead. Well, if Sin does not mind, I think I shall stick with calling him Sinclair, Margot retorted as she linked arms with Sophie. You can call me anything you wish, beloved of my oldest friend. We will all become fast friends yet. Sim winked at Margot, and she failed to stop her blush at the charming but roguish gesture. Frustrated at the winking Sin and the laughing Daniel, Margot hit the latter with her reticule. Lord help us to deal with men that are boys and fools, she proclaimed as she tugged Sophie away and gestured for Cecily to follow. Sophie was still too stunned by her encounter with Sin to speak. She could not stop herself from casting a backward glance and saw his eyes were still on her. The distance made her braver, and she gave him what she hoped was a coy smile. Her inner critic told her to stay away from Sin, but her inner heroine was telling her to indulge in one of the seven cardinal vices, and sin. Sophie sipped at her ratafia as Margot raged to Cecily and some of the other women about the follies of rakes in the ton and how they should be made to live abroad during the season. But Margot, was your husband not once a rake himself? Asked a tall brunette, whose name Sophie could not recall. The question held no sign of malice, just curiosity, and Margot's mouth dropped open in horror. Never. My Daniel may have had a few dalliances, but never did he do so with a lady, and he courted me with all the respect and chivalry one could want in a beau. Her chin jutted down at a stubborn angle. Sophie bit her lip to stop herself from laughing. A fiery Margot was always entertaining and would admit to her hot temper once cooler heads prevailed, but something about Sin really riled her up. Sophie also had the privilege as Margot's best friend of knowing about the roguishly stolen kisses and caresses she had shared with Daniel before they wed. They had giggled about them for hours on end, and Sophie asking her to repeat every detail. She was 2 years older than Margot, but had always taken the role of the younger sister in their friendship. Margot was always her staunch supporter. Now, a change in topic was clearly needed, so Sophie asked Margot about the first opera they were planning to see. This proved a worthy distraction as the women began to gossip all at once about who was playing what role and who had what seats. Satisfied that the group's attention was now completely focused on a topic that would go from strength to strength as far as gossip was concerned, she leaned over to Cecily. Cecily, I know you have an event planned for viewing it, but would it be an imposition for me to see the Botticelli? I hope you do not think me too forward for asking, she said in a soft whisper so no one else would hear. Margot had confided this tidbit in her, and Sophie had asked first if it would be too forward to ask for a glance tonight. Sophie loved art, and knowing there was a famed artwork in the vicinity was too much to bear. Cecily, endearing as always, smiled and nodded as she brought a finger to her lips and stood up. Giddy with excitement, Sophie stood with her and splashed a little bit of her drink on her dress. A good idea, a guise, Cecily applauded her quietly before turning loudly to the group. Sophie has soiled her dress. We must go and clean it up, Cecily announced. Not my intention to highlight my clumsiness, but a small price to pay in the bigger scheme of things, Sophie thought, as the women glanced sideways at her before turning back to their conversation. She knew James wanted to keep the painting veiled for a special event, but she would not be able to sleep tonight if she didn't get a chance to see it. She followed Cecily down a long hallway and into a library. In the middle of the room stood an easel, its contents draped. The servant had followed them in, and Cecily requested they light all the candles in the room. I will leave you to your admiration, Sophie. I have seen it so many times, it's quite lost its lustre. Come back the way we came and find me, and I will send for the candles to be snuffed. Sophie was astounded by Cecily's simple and pleasant attitude towards a marvelous wonder. She stopped trying to understand the other woman and rushed to the easel. Gently, she pulled down the sheet inch by inch as she took a deep breath to contain her excitement. As the plain covering fell away, the birth of Venus erupted in front of her eyes in a dizzying array of vibrant colors and textured strokes of creativity. Despite there being four figures in the painting, her eyes were automatically drawn to Venus herself. She held her fingertips as close as possible to the artwork without actually touching it and marveled at her captured expression. Venus in her mind seemed unperturbed by what surrounded her as she rose from the clamshell in all her nude glory. She looked resigned but beautiful, regal but without haughtiness. Sophie's eyes took in the ginger waves and soft white curves so like her own. She knew she boasted a more voluptuous figure, like those found in ancient stone carvings. They always filled her with confidence when she admired their beauty. Beauty, such a work of beauty, she murmured as her eyes roved over the rest of the painting and noted the intricate details captured in this mythic event. A work of beauty indeed, said a husky voice from behind her.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Oh, that was lovely. I have lots of questions for you, but first we're going to take a break for our sponsors.
Yep.
The Historical Romance Sampler podcast is a proud affiliate of Libro.fm. Libro.fm is a really cool audiobook retailer that offers the same selection of audiobooks at the same price that you would find at that other really big audiobook retailer. But instead of sending your money to a giant monopoly, your money with your purchase of Libro.fm audiobooks goes back to the local bookstore of your choice. That way you can purchase audiobooks, but still support your local literary community. Also cool is their Kiss Club, which features romance audiobooks on sale every month. If you're ready to sign up for Libro.fm, I've got a good deal for you. Using the code HISTORICAL, as in Historical Romance Sampler, sign up for a new membership and get 3 audiobooks for the price of 1. Check out the link in my show notes if you want more information. And now, back to the episode. All right, well, I am back with Steffy Smith, who just read His Regency Goddess, her entry into the Curves and Cravats multi-author series. And one thing that stood out to me, well, you kind of framed it for us as you were setting up the scene that we were about to see Sinclair's Vanity. And then we also have Sophie's kind of contemplation of beauty when she's looking at the Botticelli. Can you talk about at what point in writing did you find vanity slash beauty as a theme, and how did you decide to work with it?
So with the Vanity, when I started to, I guess, form this story in my mind and just with the message of the collaboration itself around body positivity, I didn't want to make it a story around Sophie feeling overly, negative about herself and having to like constantly validate. So the inspiration, which is kind of cheeky with the Botticelli, because I'm pretty sure it's never even been to England, but I took a bit of poetic license there because once I got the idea in my head, like it just needed to happen that way. And it's such an iconic piece of artwork of the female figure. So with that in mind, I wanted Sophie to look at the painting and see herself in it, like in a way of like beauty, in a way of like positive comparison and not, comparing herself in a way that, doesn't make her feel good about herself. And then with Sinclair, I guess with his characterization, he's a good looking guy, he's been with lots of women, does as he pleases. So he's got that vanity. But when he, I guess, meets Sophie, it kind of, rocks him to his core in a way, as in he's never quite seen somebody quite like her before, like come to life after he's some more background. He's just been abroad, like, traveling through, Europe and met lots of different women along the way. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that because I think we have a stereotype in our modern heads that women care about what we look like and men just like don't, like they don't, they'll just put on, basic deodorant and call it the day. But of course, men do experience vanity. And so I like that it's a Regency trope too, that there are dandies, but that you really like
Yeah.
leaned into that and had him be Sophie's foil. And that, like, he's in such a vanity complex that colorful cloth. Oh, that's just for fops. I can't possibly wear anything colorful.
Yes.
I love that. So, you mentioned in your intro that your stories come to you through your dreams and your fantasies. So, I'm really curious to hear more about your muse. Can you tell us about how stories come to you through your dreams?
This one was actually very random. So, one of my fellow writer friends, Olivia Fleur, she was part of the collab originally and she had to pull out and she put some feelers out. And I was like, oh, this is something I want to do, but it's, a couple of months away. I don't quite have a story. And I'm like, let me think about it. Within 2 days, Sin came to me, Sophie came to me, the Botticelli came to me. And I think it was like when I say dreams, like, that when you're trying to fall asleep and I'm not a good sleeper, your mind just races. I tend to like, I guess like fantasize or, picture, imagine, think of things, imagine myself in the historical setting. And that's just kind of how it started to come to me. Yeah, within that literally 2 day period. And I was like, I'm in. So I joined it. And then the story just flowed really organically to me. So even though I probably didn't have as much time as one would normally have to write a book, and it is a novella, so it's only around the 20,000 word mark, it was just like it was meant to be with just kind of how it all panned out. Like I didn't struggle with getting from start to finish.
I love that. And then you're writing across a lot of different eras. So, how do you, I guess, know which era to write in? And then also, how do you manage the research to write across different eras?
So with the research, because I've been, an avid historical fan since I was little, all that reading and researching and, watching TV and movies and, just the endless, getting on the internet, when that became a thing and just everything's at your fingertips. And I'm just a very curious person and I go through periods of like obsession. So like I'll like one part of history or one era and then I must know all the things about it. So there is quite a bit of, I guess, head hopping between. So as I was writing His Regency Goddess, I was also working on a Viking Age romance. So like complete opposite parts of time history. So that is something that kind of works for me, but I can imagine that as time goes on, especially as I want to explore more eras, I'll probably have to put some more process in place or, some more boundaries around working at one thing at a time. Otherwise, that might just make me very like it will be hard for me to finish one thing because my head's going to be in too many different times of history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel like writing a Viking story versus writing a Regency story is different besides the era?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Just with like I guess, societal norms and like things that will happen. So in my Viking book, he's a Viking, but he rescues her from another Viking who's like kidnapped her to sell her as a slave. Like you wouldn't really see that thing come through in a Regency. And then, in a Regency, it can be very like, pretty, going to balls, wearing nice clothes. Then, in the Viking age, you still wear nice things, I guess, for, they were the Vikings were actually very clean, contrary to public opinion, and they took a lot of pride in their appearance. But still, like, in that era, you're dressing more for comfort, for warmth, for those kind of things. So, yeah, it's just getting really out of all the different. And I think that like the language, so something I'm finding and I had some feedback come through His Regency Goddess that there was a bit of a modern feel to it. And on reflection, I think that's because I was so gung-ho on getting the body positive independent woman message across. I kind of fell into more of like a modern way of talking. So something I have to be mindful of as well is like, the etymology of words. Something said in one era wouldn't have been said in another.
I have a copy editor who works with me very closely on that. And like, she'll be like, this phrase wasn't invented until the 1920s, but it does work really well here to describe their emotions. And I'm like, oh, but I can't use it, but I want to use it, but I can't use it.
I'm a bit naughty. If it really works for my character in the scene, like I'll use it knowing that someone might say, hey, that wasn't like used then. And I guess as a writer, like you write for your readers, but sometimes you're writing for yourself as well. So I kind of like have to like stack up what, you know, what means more to me in that moment for that scene. But
Yeah.
I just think you never stop learning when you're writing with
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. It's a joy and a challenge. So you mentioned that you've been reading romance since you were little. So who are some of the authors who are most influential on your work?
I was hoping you'd ask me this, so I actually noted, I think I've got like five or six here, but I'll just quickly summarize. So the first two romances I read was like a teenager. They were my mum's. I snuck them. She doesn't know I read them obviously as a teenager, but she knows now. So the first one was The Golden Spike by Anna Lee, which was a post-American Civil War story. And she wrote a lot of westerns, which I have now collected. It was very expensive to source them all because I had to get them all from the US.
Mm,
But I love her books, and I love that historical component as well. So it's when they built the railway across the US, kind of that setting after the war. And the other one I read was Joanna by Roberta Gellis. So that's a medieval set during the reign of King John and the events leading up to the Magna Carta. So her work is a bit more heavier on the historical than the swoon, but I do love the story of Geoffrey and Joanna, like in that story. It's still very like romantic and touching, but there's still like a lot of English back history, war, drama, this, that, and the other. Then Connie Mason, I aspire to be a multi-era author, which is something she does so well. She's got so many books across so many settings. And then just lastly, Julia Garwood, of course, and all of Lindsay Sand's historicals. Like they just bring
wow.
me so much joy. Yeah. And that's not even
Yeah.
like my whole list, but these are like the top ones
Yeah,
that
those are your
yeah.
desert island
Yes.
ones.
Yes.
Well, so what is it in I know that in Australia the book distribution obviously is different. Are there Australian romance authors that you grew up reading too?
Not really. For me, finding the books, a lot of them was like just secondhand op shopping, eBay. Like I don't would never go into like a bookstore and find, you know, one of the original like mass market paperbacks like
Hmm.
to be purchased. It's always just been through sheer luck. I have amassed quite a collection. I think I've got over 100 like
Wow.
historical romance, but very much focused on the 80s, 90s. Love to collect step backs, and that's hard to find in Australia. So eBay is my friend. And yeah, and I feel like my mum had quite a few, and over the years, like, would have gotten rid of them. And I'm like, damn, I wish I was more forthcoming with how much I liked them as a teenager so I could have kept
Yeah.
them. But I have the
Yeah.
original, the first two books I mentioned, The Golden Spike and Joanna. The copies I have are the ones I've had since a teenager. So
Oh, I love that. I
yeah,
love to have a book that like I've been holding on to for
yeah,
decades. Okay, so I'm curious. I read somewhere that you love cinnamon roll heroes, which I do too. I also think of cinnamon roll heroes as kind of a modern romance thing where we're allowing the heroes to be, nice people.
yes.
What is your take on a cinnamon roll? Like, how do you think about it? And do you think, since you are a fan of classic romances, were there cinnamon roll heroes that we just don't talk about? No.
I'm just like shaking my head.
Okay.
So I've actually I'm on doing a blog for the Australian Romance Readers Association on Sunday, and I'm talking about Connie Mason, and I just leave it very high level, but it's interesting you asked me this because there are so many themes in those older historicals that you just won't see now.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that they're, right or wrong per se, because it's a product of that time period when they could write that. And, I'm a very non-judgmental person, but there's also, themes that I don't agree with and I would never touch on in my writing. So when I look back at, you know, I guess I can think of like some heroes more in like those Highlander romance, like that have a bit more of like a comedic feel to them, that more cinnamon roll. But a lot of books, the men, they make me so angry. But I'm also so invested in the story and I see how they get to their happily ever after, even like though they're such a jerk. I think I only ever read once, and this might be controversial, but Whitney, my love,
Whitney, my
Judith
love.
McNaught. Yeah,
Mhm.
I only read that once and I really did not like him, but I also really did not like her. And I was like, they're not very like loving, like
Mhm.
throughout the story. And I have been described by a reviewer in like a positive way as like a cream puff, like the way write romance. So I'm definitely more on that lighter side of thing, which is why I like a cinnamon roll. But I like them with that perceived hard exterior. So my Viking is very like, he's a Viking. The last person you would think would have that soft inner core, but he does. So that was really nice to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think I don't read a lot of classic romance, and I think I have very low tolerance for a hero that I don't like. I've never read Whitney, My Love. I've listened to several podcasts analyzing it, and I'm like, there's no way that I would get through this. But I think you're right. When there's something else in the story that we can root for, or when we can be in the heroine's place, seeing that she really wants that, then we can root for her. And then that's a little easier to get on board. But
Yep.
personally, I want to like my hero too.
100% because you want to like picture yourself in that moment. So you want to be enjoying the moment, not sitting there thinking like, I really can't stand the sight of you. And there's a few that have just come to mind that I can't think of the name, but there's a few classic historical romances that I've come across that don't actually have a happily ever after,
Oh.
which I'm just like, I don't know if it's a Connie Mason one that I read, and you go through this really like long, dramatic, chaotic love story, and then at the end, they don't actually end up together. And it's just like really, really strange. I'll have to think which one it is. And if I ever remember, I'll let you know which one it is.
Yeah.
Because that's was like, yeah, really rare to come across. But
Yeah. I would have thought that was a rule from day one.
and the themes
No.
are really, really not good in this book either. So I guess it probably led to that being more. But I was like, I don't know if I classify this as a romance book after I finished reading it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into our game about romance conventions and rules. Love it or leave it. Are you ready to play?
I'm ready.
Love it or leave it. Protagonists meet in the first 10% of the novel.
I'm a leaver. I need more in those first chapters because I really need that backstory and those insights set for each individual before they're thrown together. So,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. All right. Love it or leave it. Dual point of view narration.
love it. I don't think I could read a romance without it. I'd struggle to connect to that one point of view. So, definitely love it.
All right. Love it or leave it. Third person past tense.
Love it. Always provides that insight to the scene and characters. Love reading it, love writing it.
Nice. Love it or leave it. Third act breakup or dark moment.
Definitely in my cream puff era, so I'm definitely going to say leave it. If I am reading anything dark, I need to be mood and be aware of it. Otherwise, I'm very much for really happy, positive love.
All right. Love it or leave it. Always end with an epilogue.
Love it. It always ties the story up into a really neat arranged ribbon. And if it's a series, it's a good way to like do a bit of a teaser for what's going to happen next.
Yeah. All right. Love it or leave it. Share research in your author's note.
Yeah, normally I do. His Regency Goddess, I didn't as much. I went more around the meaning of, you know, of what I wanted to convey from reading this story, which is love yourself no matter what. But otherwise, I do like to put in, yeah, little notes that I find interesting of things that I learned during my research. So yeah, love it.
All right. And are there any romance rules I didn't ask about that you break or at least play with?
Probably just the one I mentioned before around, something I've learned, like with each new book comes learning. So the etymology, for example, and word choice, like no matter how well researched and edited a book will be, something's always going to crop up. Like reading through His Regency Goddess today, I'm like, I wish I wrote that sentence different. I wish I used, that other word. But at the same time, if it works well for me and the character, I am okay to bend a rule.
Yeah. Well, thank you for playing Love It or Leave It. And thank you for coming on the podcast. Where can our listeners find you and your books?
So on my website, steffysmithbooks.com has my link tree and has all the links to all the things. Most of my books are wide. Regency Goddess is KU Kindle only. And I have another audio book coming out, which I'm really excited about. So working with Isla Ross to narrate my Highland Heart series. And yeah, she's amazing. So can't wait to
That's
see that pop up.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll all go follow you so we get notified when your book
Yeah.
comes out. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steffi. I have really enjoyed this conversation.
Same. And yeah, really glad I got to come on and we made our time differences work.
Yes. That's it for this week. Check out the show notes where I put links for my guests, myself, and the podcast. Until next week, happy reading.